Nigel Farage is joining us. Of course, he was one of the leaders of the Brexit movement and a personal friend of mine. And as the police, I know, in Great Britain are treating this as an incident, an act of terrorism, and as I mentioned and Geraldo mentioned, targeting young children, targeting young teenagers. First, Nigel, as a dear friend, my thoughts, my prayers, and all of our prayers go out to you and our friends in Great Britain and England and Manchester. And your thoughts on what's going on there and what you think this is and what it means.
Well, horrified. I think it marks a new low in terrorism. I mean, to willfully set out to kill and injure young girls, I think it's something that when the nation awakes in the morning, and don't forget, this news didn't really break until after midnight our time, I think the country is going to wake up and be very, very shocked indeed. The fact that it happened outside London will also surprise people, because we kind of think of terrorist attacks, whether it's the bombings on the Underground or whether it's Lee Rigby, who was killed 4 years ago today on a London street. So they'll be surprised that it took place outside London, in our second city of Manchester, and also the fact that it took place in public space. That's going to worry people even more, because what do? You can check bags going into a venue, you can scan people, but clearly the way this suicide bomber planned this was to be in a place where he simply couldn't be detected. And I have to say, we are 16 days away from a general election in which open-door immigration and in which dealing with terrorism has to date not even been discussed. I think from tomorrow morning it will be.
You know, Nigel, you and I had many discussions, and I know you supported President Trump when he was a candidate, and
yes.
I know he's taken great fire and heat for wanting to protect America's borders and of course, vetting refugees from countries whose values they grew up with directly contradict our constitutional values. I've called it a clash of cultures. If you grow up under Sharia law, where men oppress women and gays and lesbians and Christians and Jews, we have a right to know if you want to bring those values with you or if you want to assimilate into our societies. I've talked about the Islamization of Europe, and you have warned your friends here in America that we are headed down the wrong path that you believe your country is headed down.
Well, one of the reasons for Brexit, Sean, is, and I made it very clear to the British people, that when Angela Merkel invited 1 million people to come into Germany, totally unchecked, not a security check on a single one of them, but ultimately those people would be able to come to Britain because they'd get European passports. And it was one of the contributory factors to Brexit. I mean, we've got a problem in this country. I think the problem is even worse in France and in Belgium. And one of the reasons that I wanted to support Donald Trump, and I still very much do support Donald Trump, and by the way, I thought that speech that he gave in Saudi Arabia was tremendous. I mean, he looked like a global statesman giving that speech.
I felt for many years that Prime Minister Netanyahu was the lone voice of moral clarity on the world stage. I've even said during the Obama years he was the only adult on the world stage that understood the nature of this evil. And now it's clear that that the Prime Minister now has a partner. And to target, I mean, if you don't believe in evil, if you target children and young adults, I don't think there's anything more profoundly evil than that. And recognizing that truth and confronting it the way he did is so important, I believe, for the safety and security of good and free people around the world. And you're right, by allowing the Islamization of Europe and not checking people's backgrounds, once they get into Germany or France, they also get into the entire European continent.
Yes, and I mean, we've with Brexit given ourselves a chance to deal with this, but we haven't focused too much on it so far in this election campaign. We will now start to have a proper conversation about it. But my feeling is that you in America have got a real opportunity not to make the same mistakes that so many countries in Europe have made. And I think you've got a leader, and yes, moral courage. You know, whatever people say about Donald Trump, or, whatever way he might upset them sometimes, whatever fights he occasionally picks and you wonder why he did it, when it comes to the big stuff, Trump has got it absolutely right.